Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com. It's in the description below. That is tmosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details. Today, we're discussing a model launched in 2019 by Panerai, and this was the fourth series, Panerai Bronzo. You're looking at the Panerai Luminor Submersible 1950 Bronzo PAM00968. So the fourth in the series that started in 2011 with the PAM382. This was the first one to be a general production model constructed in 1,000 pieces annually. It is large in bronze with a titanium caseback, 47 millimeters in diameter, maybe thinner than you would think, at 15.7 millimeters thick and then 56 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 26 millimeter spacing between the lugs. You can see on my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference, big as the look. It actually fits. This is a perfectly acceptable fit. You don't have to have proportionality, watch to wrist, when you're wearing a Panerai. Again, they were designed as instruments during the 1930s. And an instrument, by definition, always requires legibility first, and you get that. So you could see that the case itself, not the lugs, but the case, well inboard to the edge of my wrist, no issues there. It fits secure, it looks good, and as you can see, my wrist and my hand are actually a little bit larger than you think. My wrist is skinny, but the rest of me is fairly large, so if your wrist is my size, I'd say, hey, game on. This fits. 16 centimeter circumference wrist and up, time to play. Now, it won't fit under a tight cuff, but jackets might actually work out because sub 16 millimeters, I can't really get over how thin it is for what it is. We have this large Panerai rubber strap made in Italy, appropriate given the company's heritage. We have this 1970 style OP logo, a bellows style pleated system that gives it additional flexibility, and then a large trapezoidal bronze buckle. This is a good example of a PAM00968 that hasn't seen a whole lot of patina. It still has the rich, raw redness that it would have had when newly manufactured, which suggests it's led a relatively charmed and easygoing life. A lot of people do just take these to the office. Taking a quick look in profile, you can see this is the Luminor 1950 case, which is a bit truer to history. Looks more like the Italian Navy 6152 model than the Alessandro Bettarini case, or the Tunican, that was common on the first civilian Officine Panerai watches of the 1990s. So this case shape, at least for the modern era, first returned to the lineup on 2002's PAM127, the original 1950, as they called it. The watch features the world's most distinctive crown guard. You know what brand, you know what model line. It's that distinctive. It's probably the single biggest selling point of a Panerai Luminor family watch alongside the company history. Now, it does give you a lot of advantages. Historically, the idea was that coming off of 2 decades of Rolex-built oyster cases and oyster crowns on the original 3646 and its descendants, Panerai realized that the constant threading through the seals was wearing out the stem tube assemblies and the seals themselves. So the idea here is that you don't actually have to thread in and out in order to lock and unlock. Lift the lever, the cam action is removed. Now I can wind the watch. I can activate its hacking seconds or stop seconds setting mode. I can even use the intermediate position, which allows me to move the hour hand while the seconds hand continues to run, and I can jump the date forward and backwards. It's great for travelers who might cross the international date line or just need to advance or jump back a time zone or two. But again, all that's done without having to thread the crown in and out. Now, if you look, you can see that the cam lobe actually has a little bearing in it that makes the action even smoother. And just like that, I've got 300-meter water resistance. Now, if I've got wet, sweaty, or gloved hands and I need to set my watch before a dive, it can be difficult to thread out a tightly screwed screw-down crown. This is easy to do. This is also a big red flag. It'll warn you that your watch crown is unlocked before you jump in the water. Avoid accidental drowning. You know, it's easy to leave a screw-down crown threaded out 1 or 2 turns. Finally, the crown guard structure itself gives you all aspect protection. If you have a conventional crown guard like on a Seamaster and you hit the crown perpendicular, you can still do damage. Here, it's protected all the way around. Now, taking a look at the case, you can see it's all satin finished. There's very little polish, although it is there. You can see it on the lip of the bezel and on the little raised and relieved indices on the bezel. Now, it is a chunky bezel action, a 60-click diving bezel, unidirectional winding. I found that Panerai and Doxa probably have the chunkiest, most satisfying bezel click. If you like to have a really loud and overt bezel action, this is it. But it is a 60 click, so just keep that in mind. We've got a ceramic cap on the bezel. This is a style first pioneered on the PAM009, the anti-magnetic submersible, and it's a good look, gives you a two-tone look, and it matches the tone of the dial, which is sort of a, I would describe it as a combination of black and gray, maybe anthracite. We have applique Fotina colored indices with hands to match, but although this is a Fotina application, it looks less vintage than a complementary color to match the case, so it actually works well aesthetically, even if you don't like the idea of fake patina. As you can see, it also does nothing to diminish the luminescence of the dial. Luminor historically was a type of paint. In the modern era, it refers to a particular case style, but it remains luminous with a particularly large bezel pearl. And then you can see that the seconds hand is lumed, which is a nice touch because a dive watch should let you know, especially in the dark of the depths, that it's still running. And I always like a dive bezel, which to me is easier to read and more functional than a chronograph and doesn't have the downstream maintenance costs of a chronograph. Flip it over. This is a Panerai exclusive caliber. It is the 9010. So you've got 2 barrels, automatic winding, 72 hours of power reserve, particularly efficient winding with a bidirectional winding action with hybrid ceramic bearings. If you hear a little bit of a scraping or a rattling in the case, that's ceramic bearings. People sometimes ask me about this. The advantage is less friction, more efficient winding, and less maintenance. And then we have a full balance bridge with a free-sprung balance to make it a very shock-tolerant movement. So you've got a 4 hertz beat rate, the hacking function, and then also the time zone function I showed you before for manually displacing the hour hand while the watch continues to run. You can see that there's some nods to historic Panerai movements back when they used Rolex Codebert and later Angelus SF240 pocket watch movements. You would have this large 3/4 style bridge and generally a lateral brushed finish to the extent that they were finished at all. Here we also have some machined beveling, which is machine finished but very attractive, and then polished screws, satination on the wheels and barrel cover, and then engine turning on the base plate. You can see V series, that was the first year of the PAM00968, 300 meters, water resistant with a little fish logo right there, and that the case back itself is made of titanium. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.